A large part of this youth is in rural India, without any skill, without any training, right? And our industry is not pulling them up sufficiently fast, right? So when you're looking at the budget, let us not think about sectors. Let us think about, is this problem being addressed? Because this is the problem. If we can train our labor, if we can give them employment opportunities in productive jobs, then really we don't have to do anything else. Because people are the best to take care of themselves. You know, I should not be taking care of anybody else. Why? Because I don't think anybody can take care of me. So why should I think that I can take care of somebody else? I would like to take care of myself. That's why, that's why we got educated. That's why we got trained. So if this thought can be distilled into our policymakers and into ourselves, then I think we can do a lot of good. Right? So in that context, the focus on SMEs, the focus on agriculture, the focus on skills, which you talked about, skill development, right? These are very, very important issues. But please remember, these are not things which you can decide in a 1 year's budget. That, okay, I'm going to give, 20,000 crores is too little, I'll give you 50,000 crores. 50,000 crores is too little, I'll give you 500,000 crores. I will use all my foreign exchange reserves to do it. You can't solve the problems this way. You have to start and build it up. The important issue is, each year, how much are you going to have? If there is anything missing in this budget, it is the commitment of what will be done with these programs once they are started in this year. That is what is missing. But the fact that these programs should be started, regardless of how much money we have, that's a very, very, very good signal that the budget gives us. Because that's where our problem lies. Our problem does not lie in whether export is, as a percentage of GDP is good enough or not, whether our credit rating with Standard & Poor's is good enough or not. That's not where our problem lies. Our problem lies in the fact that are we giving a unique opportunity, because we face a unique opportunity in the world today with our large body of youth, and the fact that every single country in the world is actually losing labor, and we are the only ones who have the labor, right? A unique opportunity. How much are we training our youth to grab that opportunity? That is the question to ask. So in this context, the focus on agriculture, the focus on skills, the focus on SMEs is very important. Why SMEs is so important? Because if you look at the history, again, if you look at the consistent history of countries, you will find that no high levels of sustained growth has been maintained by the growth of large industries. It has been the small industries becoming large industries. It has been new investment starting, growing bigger and bigger, right? So instead of having one Narayan Murthy, if we can have 30 Narayan Murthis, then we will be able to sustain high growth. And Narayan Murthy doesn't start as Narayan Murthy or Bill Gates. They start small and then they are built up. Therefore, the focus on the growth of SMEs is very, very important. The only problem I have is that again we are so caught up in our old style of thinking that whenever we talk about small and medium enterprises, we talk about supporting small and medium enterprises. The moment we think that way, what we are doing is we are giving an incentive to the small and medium enterprises to stay small. Because the incentives go away once you are no longer small. So instead of using the term SMEs, I would have been happier if the finance minister had used the term startups. That there will be a massive program to encourage startups. Instead, we encourage no exit and the small players. And of course, skills was strongly talked about. Foreign trade, Amir has already talked about foreign direct investment, SPV for infrastructure, pool and urban renewal. How much time do I have? I'm running off the... 10 minutes? 10 minutes, okay, very good. So we can discuss these during the question answer session. Two observations I have to make. One was FM Son quote that outlays do not lead to outcomes. And the other is, a bit tongue-in-cheek. If you look at the way India has been going, right, India has always been a follower. We are very good followers. We try to look at other countries. You go to any economic discussion or debate, especially with policymakers. You try to say anything new, they will immediately ask you, which country has done this? As if that is the clinching argument in the entire debate. Now, I believe that in India, for the first 20-25 years, at least till the 70s or 30 years, we followed Soviet Union. The government can solve all problems. Starting mid-80s, we suddenly became very pro-West. Markets can solve all problems. In this budget, the thing that bothered me the most is that we now believe that civil societies can solve all problems. Because in every single aspect of agriculture that he talked about, he mentioned civil societies. Now you may ask, where did we get this idea from? This seems to be our own idea. We got it from Bangladesh. Now, what are the major positives in the thing? Direct access, though of course, I'm not going to say any more about direct access. Gangopadhyay is here and I've been reading the papers and now it seems it's not clear whether the overall tax burden has gone up or gone down. Direct access, yes, it has gone down, but if you connect all the other taxes and just look at the disposable income of the individual, it's not clear whether disposable income has gone up or not. Some rationalization in indirect taxes, promise to monitor program. This is very, very important. We have always talked about evaluating programs. Remember, when you evaluate a program, you're only going to decide whether you should repeat the program or not. That's what you're looking for. When you're monitoring a program, you're doing it continually during the project. And therefore, if anything is going wrong, you can fine-tune the project. You can readjust your program. So monitoring, I hope that's what the finance minister meant. Monitoring is a very, very different concept from evaluating, reviewing. We have all these independent reviewing being done of all projects that we do. But that is wrong. That we cannot afford to do that. We don't have that much money. We cannot wait for 5 years to find out that what we did was wrong. We need constant monitoring. And the use of the term and the way he has used it suggests that he is aware that there has to be continual monitoring and fine-tuning of programs. Financial markets. I am a finance person, and in financial markets I think this budget has been fantastic. This is something that the budget can do, and it has done. Okay. And what the budget can do in financial markets is not throw money, which is even better. You don't need government resources therefore. You just need to change certain laws and regulations, and that's what they have done. I'm going to skip this for lack of time. No, that's unfair. That's unfair. If you ask me, if I were to choose, what is the most important thing in this year's budget, I would say voluntary savings. And here I will make my bias clear. I believe in markets very strongly. I also believe that no adult is an idiot. I also believe that the policymakers, experts, may be fantastic in what they do, but they know nothing about what others should do. Therefore, to me, somebody trying to tell anybody that this is the way you should lead your life is either a spiritual person, and I don't know how to measure their performance, or the person is lying. Because I don't believe that. Right? If I know what is good for me, doesn't mean you should do it. That jump in logic I can never understand. If I think something is good for me, I have no objection in therefore saying that I should do it. I have no objection to that. But therefore you should do it is something I find very unacceptable. And that is what the government has been trying to do all along. So when the government says that you can save up to 1 lakh in whatever instrument you like, to me, that's a government which is trying to get matured. Right? Let the people decide where they want to save. How can some people sitting in Delhi decide what is good for everybody else in the country, how they should save by giving tax incentives? Why should they do that? You want to give a tax incentive for saving? Give it for saving. Say that all savings, 1 lakh savings is free. And that's what they have done. So to me, this shows a huge change in mindset. And what is most important is that very few people have opposed this. Which says that not only has the government's mindset changed, But our own mindset has changed. We have not, criticized the finance minister for saying this. The finance minister has also said that we need investment for growth. And the best avenue or the best way to get this investment in is to operate through financial markets, because markets correct themselves very, very fast, especially financial markets. So that again is a great mindset change. It's talked about SPV for infrastructure, and is going to change the archaic Banking Regulation Act. So a lot of derivative markets are now going to start. A lot of flexibility in regulation is going to come in. Negatives, Gangopadhyay has already said it, and say, sir, I agree with you, that there is some problem with the calculations. But if you look deeply into it, there are certain things you must be very careful about. What the Finance Commission does, the Finance Minister cannot do anything about, the budget cannot do anything about. But probably the one sleight of hand that has been done, and which should be kept in mind, is that the correct question to ask in this budget is that all those nice things, the so-called politically correct things, which have been said in the first part of the budget, not part A of the budget, but in the first part of the budget, which is about 75%, right, the other day from what you mentioned, 75% of the budget on agriculture, rural development, on skills, on irrigation, this, that and all. A large chunk of these are state issues. Center can do very little about them. And a large part of this money will come from the states through market borrowings, which is what the Finance Commission has said. Therefore, even though the deficit of the center is within your 4.3, 4.5 band, the consolidated deficit, it's not clear whether it is going to fall or not. So that is something to be kept in mind. The serious negatives, some things that are much more... By the way, I must tell you, I guess Amit's tongue-in-cheek comment about Shubhashish will talk about the deficit. I guess he said that because I do not have any objection to high deficits. The example that is given is China, which has low deficit, high growth. But if you look at what happened in China, unlike in India, all the banks are government controlled. And all their infrastructure lending has been done by these banks, which now have about 50% non-performing assets. We fund these things through the budget, and therefore it shows up in budget deficits. Right? Now, is China doing well in terms of its infrastructure growth, and therefore its high growth? The answer is yes. And the fact that they have put it up to the banks doesn't mean that there is no deficit, because those banks are owned by the government. So I don't think the deficit is important, an issue, especially for a developing economy. But the serious negatives are sectoral focus. As I said before, I don't think that I'm in any position to judge which sectors are going to grow. You should be willing to listen to me, if at all, you should be willing to listen to me if I put my own money in those sectors. What do the policymakers do? Do they put any money into the sectors that they think are the growth sectors of the country? Check. I promise you they don't. Then why should you listen to what they say? And this whole idea of playing God, of trying to decide that 10 years later which are the sectors that will grow, nobody thought about the service sector in India till it happened. We have such fantastic experts in the government and outside. How come we never thought about the service sector till it happened? So the sectoral focus, which since 91 was going away, right, seems to have come back. If you look at the budget, there have been specific sectors identified and special incentives given to them. And that to me is totally unacceptable. The same thing has been done with banks. I just mentioned China. Our banks are extremely healthy. We have the most healthy banks in all of Asia. All of Asia, forget China, all of Asia. And now we are trying to get into that rut by again telling banks that they must lend to such and such sector, which is something that I thought was something that happened in the past. If the government wants to subsidize somebody, let the government subsidize directly. Now, why destroy the banking sector in the process? Because if you have got it wrong, then not only have you not helped that sector, you have also destroyed the banking sector. Right? So I don't like this at all. There was no talk about recovering bad loans. It is very fashionable in India to talk about changing labor laws. Right? In every seminar you go to, in every discussion you have, people talk about changing labor laws. Now, I believe labor laws need to be changed. However, it has to be sequenced correctly. You cannot change labor laws without changing bankruptcy laws. Because remember, in all countries which have very flexible labor laws, there are also very strict bankruptcy laws. So the people that get fired first is the incumbent management, which never happens in India. Never happens. And both in terms of political economy and in terms of the fact that if there is no bankruptcy cost to management, that is to say if they don't lose their jobs, then there is no way they are going to ensure that companies don't get sick. Why? Because if you have to protect sick companies, the only way you can protect it is by pumping in more money. And money is absolutely fungible. I told you, financial markets have an extremely fast adjustment process. It's extremely fungible. So in the name of labor, protecting labor, what we are doing is allowing inefficient management to continue. And if we want to grow and generate more employment opportunities, we must get that bad capital out and get it transformed into more efficient, productive capital. And that is what, if you talk about missed opportunity, this is what I think the government missed. Because if the government had said, okay, we are going to change the labor laws, but we will start it by kicking off changes in bankruptcy laws, then I think they would have done a smart thing. So that, you have to, given the context in which this presentation is being made, there are two other things that one needs to talk about. One is the transaction tax, and the other is the fringe benefits. These are two things that people must talk about. It is not because my time is running out, but because I think these are candidates for rollback that I'm not going to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you. And unlike economists, generally, I think they have got into the core of the issues that we were wanting to know. In the overall, both of them seem to be happy with the budget, though they have differing views on the very concept of the budget, or the role of the budget, or the parameters of the budget, and the breadth and width of the budget and all. But it's happy to know that we are not far off the mark in our budgetary exercises, though they feel that a lot of unwanted stuff is being put into the budget exercise. It's also gratifying to know that in the core areas like agriculture or manufacturing or infrastructure, we are moving in fairly good direction, and finance sector also, their own analysis seems to be that we have possibly progressive measures. They have also pointed out to us what needs to be done. The other areas which they consider remaining as grey areas in a complex nation as ours, where we need to go with a little more, higher degree of orientation and little more perhaps risk-taking towards the development process. And what I am able to understand is that we are on a growth trajectory, and with some little corrections we could go forward, move forward. So to that extent, I think this has been an extremely acceptable presentation. Neither they were like statisticians who tell us lies and lies and lies and make us believe that they are facts and facts and facts. Nor were they economists who take us out on a broad daylight when we all know it is absolute daylight, try to explain to us what is day, what is night, and define them from different angles and analyze them and measure them. And they'll tell us that day is not night and night is not day, and then they will leave us completely confused as to whether we are on a daylight or on a night. They didn't do that. So we are absolutely clear on what they are wanting to talk to us about. So now the forum is open for us, and you could seek any clarification you need. Or they could also make supplementaries as we go forward with that. So let me perhaps initiate the discussion first. I don't know who is going to answer me. The one unanswered question that I have been asking economists and managers of economy: how do we manage the foreign exchange reserves? I've been asking this for the last 3 years. I have not been myself able to figure out. Because we know China has over $600 billion of foreign exchange reserves. Hong Kong has close to $130 billion. Taiwan, $200 billion. South Korea, 150, 160. Russia, about a little over $100 billion. And India has touched $130 billion. And as I told you, we are growing at a rate of $3 billion almost a week. So we are possibly likely to end up with $200 billion, and all this money is lying locked up, plenty of money. $5 billion means close to about 23,000 crores. And we need to invest at least I would say 200,000 crores annually on infrastructure. If the kind of development we are talking about, we should reach anyway. And we have no plans to invest even 10% of that 20,000. So the question is, would it not be prudent somehow to organize, we draw 25, $30 billion out of the reserves annually, use it as a seed, and raise extra commercial borrowing on the underlying asset of this foreign exchange reserve 3 times, 4 times that, so that you can annually raise about $100 billion, which is equivalent to 4.5 or 500,000 crores annually. Perhaps in the next 5 years, we may be able to invest 2,500,000 crores to infrastructure, and we can catch up with China. And that is exactly what China has done when we say that they have funded the infrastructure through banking system and all that. Could I have your views on that?
Say that this is not a budget question. This is a question outside the syllabus. But when it comes to forex reserves, let us not look at the issue. Since we are mentioning China all the time, let us really know what China has done. Now, when we talk about foreign investment coming into China, right? China opened up to foreign direct investment in 1982. Between 1982 and 1993, which is 11 years. Right? I forget the exact figures now. I'm not carrying my laptop, otherwise, those figures are there. But what I do know is that what China got on a cumulative basis, that is, sum of those 11 years, is less than what India got between 1991, when it opened up, and the year 2000, which is about 10 years, in 10 years' time. Now, this is foreign direct investment. China did not allow FIR investment, right, in those 11 years. India did. So the total money coming into India in the first 10 years was much more than China got in the first 10 years. Between 93 and 94, the foreign direct investment into China jumped 3 times, from $7 billion in the year 93 to $23 billion in the year 94, and then it took off. That was also the time that China started investing heavily in infrastructure. So what we are seeing, in China today, we are seeing China 28 years after it started its liberalization process. What we are seeing in India today is where where China was in 1993. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. We are now thinking of infrastructure, and last year, in the year 2002, so that was last year, the foreign investment into India from the US was more than the foreign investment from the US into China. So let us keep these things in mind. Let us not try to compare China 28 years later with India 10 years or 12 years later. So we are actually moving faster than China in that process without destroying our banking sector. Step one. Step two. If we are talking about foreign exchange reserves, right? We are not encouraging foreign investment to come in the same way that China did. There are two reasons for that. One very good reason is that we have a domestic industry base which China never had. Right? China did not have that private domestic industry base that India has. So if you are trying to attract foreign investment, you have to give the same incentives to domestic players. And you are actually doing a disservice to the domestic players by trying to give any incentive to the foreign players. So which brings me to the second point. Therefore, why should you not think the same way about foreign exchange reserves as you would if you had your own money as reserves? Because this is the country's money. This is not own money. This is not a business's money. Remember that people are moving into India knowing that they have a tough market. Pepsi, Coke did not make profits when they moved in. In China they did. China foreign investment turnaround was 6 or 7 years. They recovered their money. In India it is very difficult for foreign investors to make money. They are coming into India for the long term. Why? Because India is a huge market. They believe India has a very sustained growth prospect. They know that India is a young economy. They know that the Indian spending patterns compared to earlier generations is changing drastically. They know that and they are willing to wait to recover their money. What they need is this certainty. If your reserves are low, then you're making yourself more volatile. A thing like the Asian crisis today cannot happen in India. Why? Because we have huge amounts of reserves. So nobody would be wondering whether they can take out their dollars or not. Plus we have a freely floating dollar, which the Asian economies did not have. Either they had fixed exchange rates, which China still has, or they had guaranteed debt repayments in foreign denomination. So they face problems. We, instead of doing that, have used the market to give that certainty, that stability. That is what our reserves are doing. So yes, if you take out these reserves and put them into infrastructure, we will have infrastructure. But we are opening ourselves to this instability. So in that context, I would say, if you show me a calculation, no hunches please, because this is not your money, this is the nation's money. So if you can show me through a calculation that, okay, we should have 7.3% spent on infrastructure, I will take it. But you cannot go by hunches. You cannot say, I think that this is a good idea. Because this is not business.
Thank you, Doctor. What you say makes a lot of economic sense. Now we have another 15-20 minutes for interaction. I have received 2 questions. Any of you who wants to raise questions, you can send your notes like this or stand up, raise your hands and ask. The first question I have is, black money is almost like a parallel economy, second economy, not Throwback. How putting a tax on bank withdrawals will control black money?
Can't avoid it.
Yeah, you can be brief also in your answer.
Yeah, I will be, because this is a very delicate matter. Delicate in the following sense, because it's very difficult to argue this case one way or the other. Because one has to know the thinking behind the finance minister and his team to figure out what exactly was he up to. One thing that he keeps talking about, post-budget, not during the budget speech or anywhere in the budget, is that this is for tracking the money. Now, how, I don't know. frankly, because our banks are all computerized. So if you want to track anybody's, because this whole idea of tracking the money, you really don't care whether the rupee that I gave you then was passed on to a third person. I don't think that that's what he means by tracking money. But other than that, he's not going to do anything else because, and that he cannot do with this tax. The important thing about tracking money is, as was correctly pointed out, that is this a method of identifying black money? And the answer is no. But as an economist, do I think that cash transactions should be discouraged? The answer is yes. Now, whether this is the right way to discourage it or not, I don't know. I don't think so, by the way. But I think if there are various things happening in India which make it into a modern economy. The one thing that is not happening is doing away with cash transactions. It makes a lot of sense to do away with cash transactions because the economy becomes much more efficient if you can deal in checks. Today, even for, when you're paying 16, 20, 25,000 rupees, you go and buy a TV, the shopkeeper insists on being paid in cash. But that is something that should be discontinued. But this is not the way to do it, I agree.
Yes, Doctor, I agree with you. I think it's a very major issue. I'll just tell you as a finance man, see look at the scenario. You have heard that in the last 2-3 years, over 300 crores were withdrawn from banks in cash and disappeared. You may call it hawala, you may call it insurgency, terrorism. Withdrawn from banks and the amount disappeared. I've seen in the banks which I have audited, I have seen the accounts. 40 lakhs, 50 lakhs, 60 lakhs, amount remitted into bank in a day, withdrawn 70 lakhs, 80 lakhs in cash. Every day almost, coming and going through one account, second account, third account. Bank is not bothered either about the deposit they receive, they are not to ask, or about the withdrawal you make. So the black money can be traced either by going through the source of the money, the deposit, or by going through the utilization of the money, the withdrawal. They fail. To this day, they have not proved where this 300 crores has come used in Kerala. So how many crores would have been used elsewhere? Nobody. So they are now trying to say, let us have some control over withdrawal. But as Dr. Upadhyay said, that's not going to be. Well, if banking channel is not available, the money will anyway go through various other channels. So you have to have some other mechanism, other than all these much more powerful economic mechanisms to get to the root of the problem. The second question is, this budget has proposed tax on withdrawal of money, the same thing. At rupees 10 for rupees 10,000, do you think is a correct thing? I think one and the same thing. Any other question? Yes, please.
See, in the overall context of income and expenditure in the budget, what is the significance of subsidies in terms of number? Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You mentioned that.
Well, again, if I read that question in a larger fashion, the question really that everybody is asking is, are subsidies justified? Are subsidies a burden to the state? The important issue that we need to look at is, are subsidies reaching the people they were meant for? And sadly, as we all know, they're not. Number of studies on anything, we partnered one study in Kerala itself, trying to see electricity subsidies and LPG subsidies, and we find that they all reach the middle class and the upper middle class, which they were not meant for. So clearly subsidies should come down. This budget has not made any impact on that. In fact, marginally subsidies will go up. So I'm not arguing that subsidies should be removed or should go away, because there are certain subsidies that we might possibly need for a little while. But the only way out is to ensure that subsidies directly reach the person you want them to. For example, fertilizer subsidies. Who do they go to? We all know. They go to the fertilizer company. We want the farmer to get them. So it's better to give the farmer 5 rupees than to go and tell the fertilizer company that if you sell for X minus Y amount, we will pay you that deficit and so on. That shouldn't be the way out. It should be given directly.
Yeah, on subsidies, you see there are two views. Yesterday we heard another view, and these two views are often in circulation. You see, as Doctor said, subsidies are given food, petroleum and fertilizer. And there used to be all kinds of subsidies. There is a view that what the Western world does by introducing the social security is subsidy. You go to Canada, everything is subsidized. If you are 60 plus in Canada, you can go without a single pie in your pocket. You can go through buses, you can go through trams, you can do many things. It's all subsidized, state subsidized. So therefore, those kinds of social security is subsidy. As Doctor said, goes right to the people who deserve. But here, we don't have that kind of a social security subsidy. So they are trying to give subsidy through certain other economic measures. But they are sorely criticized and curtailed. So we don't know whether finally what should be the case with subsidies is a matter of much larger economic policy. Yes.
I have a question to Dr. Subhashish. You were mentioning about the fiscal deficit position as not being very worrying, because inherently 4.4% apparently has always, from what we understand, is a very high figure of fiscal deficit. Fitch ratings, etc., say that it has to be brought down to 3.4. At least a 1 point decline is necessary to make India an investment-grade country and all that. At the same time, you have now told us that the actual fiscal deficit position of China does not actually represent the correct position because of hidden NPA levels or whatever it is as far as the Chinese banking system is concerned. Is it that the world is actually sleeping over these NPA levels of the Chinese banks? Is that not really factored into computing the fiscal deficit of China? Why is it that China has achieved an investment grade status and so much of FDI is actually coming into China, whereas we have to actually drop a point to do that?
You did not listen to me. I told you that the China is getting its foreign investment only now. India started getting its foreign investment at a much faster rate than China. So that part I'm leaving. So coming back to the fiscal deficit issue. And also remember, foreign direct investment has never led to growth. Foreign direct investment has always followed growth. If a country is growing, it is signaling that it is stable. If you have sustained growth, you are signaling that you are stable. That encourages foreign investment to come in. Foreign investment is not made by taking a piece of paper and saying, okay, if I put in $1, I will get back this much, so I will get 1.02 here, I'll get 1.3 there, therefore I should invest there. That's not how foreign direct investment happens. See? So in that context, that is irrelevant. The real issue is whether fiscal deficit, does it? There were two parts. There were two things that you said in one go. One was investment grade, right? The other was, does high fiscal deficit matter, right? Now think about it. Depending on what this deficit is for, right? Depending on what this deficit is for, it either matters or it doesn't matter. Let us not get, that is why we have to be careful. We cannot say that China is investing in infrastructure, why can't we? But by the way, you cannot have a fiscal deficit of more than 4%. That is where we make the mistake. When we talk of fiscal deficit, we only talk of fiscal deficit. And that to me is a silly way to go about it. We have to ask ourselves the question, if we have fiscal deficit, it means that the government is funding something over and above what it is getting in this current year. First question we ask, does it mean that it will be able to recover this money? And when is it going to recover this money? That's the first question we ask. The second question we ask, which is what economists should be asking. Because the first question anybody can sit down and calculate, and with a transparent government, which our government unfortunately in spite of all the new changes that are taking place is not yet quite transparent, right? But that should be easy to figure out. The more important economic debate is it the best way of doing it? In the sense that if the government was funding, but the private sector was providing, then could this money be recapitulated instead of 6 years, in 5 years? That is what we should be debating, not what is the level of deficit. You see, we always get caught up in debates which are not relevant to us, which are relevant to some economists out there, either World Bank, IMF, or some university out there. And we all get caught up in that. For 15 years, let's face facts, for 15 years, our deficit has been high. Our growth rate has been steady and growing. Statistics, he said, but this is a statistic that, we should, one of my friends has a very nice statement. He says that much of the thinking in India can be put together in this phrase or in this sentence. My mind is made up. Don't confuse me with facts.
Sir, I have a question. Sir, this is regarding the increase in non-plan expenditure is to the tune of 36,000 crores, whereas increase in plan expenditure is only to the tune of 6,000 crores. What does it mean?
Well, again, we should understand that this plan and non-plan expenditure mean nothing if you have planned on a project which is more than 1 year duration. Right? Again, the question to ask is, for example, a more important issue. Let me first say that suppose you have built a project, right? But the project now has to continue. Repair, maintenance, they will be non-plan. But you need that. Once you have built the project, suppose you had one project, you did that. Once it was done, next year there should be zero plan expenditure on that. But a lot of non-plan. Much of India's problem is that we don't maintain our capital. So those are not the right things to do. Again, I know that this is what we have been doing for the last 20-25 years. But we are now a modern changing economy. We must also start looking at things differently. Should not use old methodologies and old solutions for new problems and new issues.
One last question, yeah.
Regarding the
Anyone else would like to ask a question?
non-performance assets, what is your suggestion to break the ice? Non-performance assets, you told it is about 50% of the time.
There is challenge.
Yeah, our case is also not bad.
No.
It is very good.
5%.
Yeah.
Less than 5%.
Very good.
So, how you are suggesting to monitor the non-performance assets in a creative manner?
See, there are two parts to this. One is monitoring, right? And the other is how to solve this NPA problem. If our NPA is below 5%, if you can, this is a loan that you are making. Again, we must understand that if there is zero NPA, say, ideal case is what you think, right? Zero NPA. That's the worst possible thing that can happen. Because the whole idea of having banks, when we are talking about startups, SMEs, people going out and getting money, right? We are saying that there must be an institution who should bear the risk, not individuals. Bank is such an institution, right? Now, if the bank only lends to projects that have 100% success, then who is bearing the risk in this entire economy?
The government.
No. I am bearing the risk of your business. That's what is happening. I don't think that's a good idea. The bank is a specialized institution in the art of bearing risk. Why should we say that no, you cannot bear risk? The issue is, however, why do we want to look at a bank NPAs? Do we look at a steel mill's accumulated losses? We don't. Why do we want to look at bank NPAs? Because the banking sector, in addition to doing all these loans, credit credit, all that, also performs the role of a payment system. So if your bank fails, it can lead to contagion run, and a lot of other banks may fail, the entire financial sector may collapse. That's why we have a special focus on NPAs. Otherwise, in and of itself, these figures on NPAs mean nothing. If there is an adequate capital base, how does it matter? So this bank is bad, get the management out, get some new management in, let them choose loans properly. But because it can lead to contagion, that's why you have bank regulation and you have a focus on NPAs and things like that.
Thank you. Yes. Yours is the last.
Do you think it's fair to have a tax on fringe benefits? Like a country like India, where is not a government business.
We have said that it will be rolled
No,
back.
but a quick answer to that is no, I do not think so, for the very simple reason, and Mr. Gangopadhyay will bear me out on this. A fringe benefits is not an accounting item. Given that it is not an accounting item, There will always be dispute on what is the fringe benefit and what is not, which means you're giving tremendous power to the tax authorities, which means you're going counter to the entire Kelkar committee recommendations that you're trying to implement and giving or allowing harassment by tax authorities. Forgetting anything else.
Yeah, this is again, there is a problem, this is it. The same case as in the case of cash transactions, there is a problem. Large number of companies, I am associated with several companies. I will not talk about them, it may not be existent in my companies, but there are, if you take all India, a large number of companies pay heavy amounts, incur heavy amounts as fringe benefits to employees. Most of them are not accounted in the right manner. It is very difficult for a taxman to go and find out what kinds of fringe benefits could be disallowed and how much could be disallowed. And even when they make it in the final analysis at the tribunal level, it will be knocked out. So somebody gets substantial amount of benefits from the companies as cash and various other forms. No tax is paid on that. It is not for the companies to pay tax on that, the employees to pay tax on that. But who is not properly accounting for it? The companies are not properly accounting for it. If companies account for all fringe benefits properly in a righteous manner, the taxman can lay down his hands on them and say this is taxable and this is not taxable, or this is allowed but not allowed. So therefore they say, we are not able to reach you and you are giving tax-free allowance huge amounts. You see, the estimate is that if the fringe benefits are taxed as it is now wanted to be, the tax revenue this year will be 25,000 crores. That is what the apex chambers are saying that. So you can imagine what kind of money is given and what kind of money goes tax-free. 25,000 crores. That will knock off 1/4 of our deficit, fiscal deficit. Revenue deficit. So therefore they say then let the companies pay. We have no way to get to you. But that's not the realistic solution either. Okay, I'll now close with a very positive note. You see, we are trying to benchmark with China. The whole world is afraid of China, the whole world is afraid of India. 25 years from now, there will be 3 global superpowers in the world, undoubtedly, USA, China and India. USA and China may be there
because the Bush's term.
Then we conventionally believe, but they are a deficit, huge deficit nation as we all know. They may or they may not be there, they may, on account of weight of contradictions, they may disappear as a pack of cards, as Soviet Union disappeared, may happen. China is not stable. Nothing is true about China. No statistics are correct about China. So we do not know how long China will last. But nevertheless, the whole world is looking at China and everyone is investing in China, everyone is opening shops in China. So we cannot go behind. We have to compete with them, we have got to benchmark with them, we have got to outbeat them. We are not wanting to do that. They have a tremendous amount of willpower, they have done it, whether you like it or not, whether it is bank's money or government's money or anybody's money. In the last 12 years, they have completely restructured the nation unbelievably, which any other Western advanced nation, including USA, would have taken 30 to 40 years to build. What have they built? 28,000 kilometers of express super highway, 1,800,000 kilometers of top class national highways, 700,000 kilometers of world class water channels, 217 airports, of which at least 70 are of world class, 1,325 air economic target we are going to close it. But it is not true that they are getting all the foreign investments. In fact, some of us were trying to analyze. Last year, for example, you all say in platforms, China gets $60 billion foreign investment, India gets only $4 billion. But now we are studying and analyzing, it is not true. China takes a different calculation, than what we have. In fact, the reason, it will come out in about 10 days time, you will see the present analysis that China is including foreign institutional investments in their FDI calculation. We are not. China is including the entire non-resident Chinese investments in China. From non-resident Chinese in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in Taiwan, billions of dollars which they are investing. That is also included. We are not including non-resident Indians' investments in India, whether NRA account, FCNR account or anything. We are only calculating our own direct foreign investments in specified sectors. And China has joint ventures, China has cooperatives, joint venture cooperatives, different kinds of FDIs. So if a foreign investor invests in a joint cooperative $5 billion, and if a local Chinese invests another $5 billion, they take $10 billion as foreign investments, we will take only half of it. So if we were to do this same way of calculation of foreign investments as China does, the latest figures show that ours last year, current year, 2004-2005, what do you think our foreign investments will be comparable to China? The figures seem to be $52 billion as against China's $60 billion. So we are not far behind. But China utilizes everything. There is no savings. There are no huge amounts in banks. Anybody invests in banks, it is all invested. Withdrawn and invested. As doctor said, Gangopadhyay said correctly, Gangopadhyay said it is all going to infrastructure, this, that and all that. We are keeping a whole lot of money. 2,50,000 crores unutilized with banks. 1,75,000 crores unutilized with financial institutions. Cooperative banks, all kinds of money lying, unproductive, unutilized. We don't know how to invest, we don't want to invest. So if you are as aggressive as them, as risk-taking as them, as progressive as them, we have the money. With our kind of money, we can invite 4 to 5 times of external commercial borrowing, and we will have huge money to invest in the next 10 years or 15 years if we want, but we must be as aggressive as them in this. But our economists believe we should not be, because we expect, our economists believe that China will fall. What they are doing is wrong. This is not sound economic management what they are doing. You create all infrastructure out of borrowed funds, all out of NPAs of banks, and tomorrow you will have to go on, making each and every bank and financial institution bankrupt globally. So as was happening in Japan at some point of time, Chinese banks also will start going bankrupt one after the other. There will be endless bankruptcy. Chinese government will not be able to support them. Chinese economy will collapse and China will wither away like Soviet Union or any other nation. That is what we believe. But that's not what they believe. So we have got to marry these two concepts. Thank you very much.
I'm sure that we have had a very fruitful, value-added and peaceful session. Dr. Ravi talked about lost opportunities and Dr. Subhashish asked us, we're definitely having a high rate of growth. Will we be able to sustain it? I'm sure at DC School of Management, these students will have some hot topics to discuss about the budget after long hours of class and when we lie in our swimming pools on Sundays. Thank you, sir. To conclude our session, I call upon Professor Rama Bharadwaj, the Principal and Associate Dean of our DC School of Management and Technology, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Before that, please give a big hand to two of our most excellent economists.
Respected dignitaries on the dais, ladies and gentlemen. Vote of thanks normally is a very formal thing, but I think that's the important part wherein one has to put in one's heart and then say a word of thanks to all the people who have accepted the invitation and come here to grace the occasion. First of all, budget is a thing that creates expectations, then generates fears, and then sometimes ends in hopes. Here we had a very fruitful discussion, and now first of all, I want to thank Mr. Venugopal, who has brought peace in our midst after the two distinct kind of presentations about the budget. And he has ended in a very peaceful highly to present a memento to Mr. Venugopal. Please. Please clap your hands.
So next, I come to Dr. Amirullah Khan, who threatened me with the title of his presentation, Missed Opportunity. Whatever we miss, we are very desperate about it. But what happened was, as the speech or presentation continued, I think he was the most optimistic about Indian economy. And he was actually repeatedly, I think at least about 5 times, if my counting is right, he went on repeating the word strong economy. And it is really a good news for management graduates. Because the economy is strong and you are likely to land up or lap up good jobs. So that's a very good positive note. I thank Dr. Amirullah Khan for giving us a very nice presentation and also down-to-earth presentation which was extremely useful to us. And all the people who present here must have enjoyed the presentation, and I request Professor N.K. Prabhu, our HR professor, to present a memento to you. Thank you, Professor.
I'd like to ask you, does this count as a...
Next I come to Dr. Gangopadhyay, who also has been very optimistic, but the title of the presentation was quite encouraging except for one word, common minimum budget. Could it have been maximum budget or I don't know, but common minimum budget. And the pleasant thing about this presentation was, in the first few seconds itself, he just told that he has already fallen in love with Kerala, the God's own country. So that was a very good beginning. And that with that particular sentence, he has endeared the whole of Kerala crowd and carried them away. And then another thing is that he is very optimistic. And he has been repeatedly saying it's a very good budget, and he was actually referring to empowerment, education and health. And one main thing that I noticed was, he never bothered about specifics, and he was bothering only about the direction the budget has given. I think that's a very, very positive note, because India as a great country cannot go to specifics perhaps. We always think in macro, not in micro. But unfortunately, what happens when the budget comes, every housewife will be looking for LPG price, or the price of sunflower oil, or whatever happens in the everyday house that we are more bothered about. And we are more about micro and macro. But what happens exactly? What happens in macro affects micro like anything. So we have to take care about macro. And what I feel is that he has given a very clear indication to the effect that budget is only for 1 year. That we have to always remember. And 1 year is a very short period to make very great changes in the economy of any country, that he has been continuously insisting upon. And he has been referring to sick industries. Let sick industries look after themselves. That's also in one way it is correct, because we have no money to spend on sick industries. So let them look after themselves. And this 1 year budget is too short a period to assess anything. That I think that's a very agreeable point. And another point he made was about startups. That is an excellent point where at least in the next year we have to, the finance minister has to take care of. Anyway, and we were talking about deficit also. This was the first person who may hear that deficit is not a problem at all. So that's an excellent kind of a presentation. So here I thank Dr. Subhash Gangopadhyay for his excellent presentation, and he has given us a very new dimension to the whole of thinking about budget. And I request Professor Thomas Varghese, our marketing professor, to present the memento to him. Next comes Dr. Paili, our grandfather and the father of modern management education in Kerala, who is a very familiar person in our campus. And then his presence here, you may not know, he is above 85. So, but wherever he is called, he comes.
That's not
But
correct.
whether I stand. Okay, sir. So anyway, he just he accepts invitations and he actually is. Okay, so it's actually whenever Dr. Pairi comes to your campus, I feel inspired because I am very young. I'm only at the age of 58. I'm very young. So normally I have got many more years to live, and also I will have many more years to thank Dr. Pairi for his presence wherever I am. So thank you very much, sir, for your presence here. Next is our facilitator. Mr. D.C. Ravi, without whom nothing of the sort would happen, because he is such a person who encourages us to any great length. For everything he gives us encouragement, and with his support, DCSMAT is going to grow to greater heights. I am very sure about it. I think it should be a big clap to him because it's a kind of institution that is going to become a national institution within 3 years. 3 years time we give for that. For any management institution, 5 years is the time. So we are reaching that, and within a very short time, the whole of Kerala crowd will be there in Vagaman seeking admission. And also we are going national. Okay. And the next thing is, I actually thank all the organizers of this function for making this function a grand success. And every one of you has come here with great expectations, and I think all these expectations have been fulfilled, and I am sure that you will remember DCSMAT, and you will remember all the dignitaries on the stage, you will remember all of us always. And I just end with this thing: hopes flourish where budget blooms. Every year it grows, decays and dies, giving birth to the next and the next. Hope to meet you during the next March for an exhilarating session, and I welcome all of you to Pullikaram DCSMAT to spend your time with us and enjoy there and bless us. Thank you very much.